Hey everybody, Robert Douglas here. It's Friday. I'm happy that it's Friday. I hope you are too. It's Deploy Friday. That's the name of the show, and it's also a tip of the hat to the fact that Friday is absolutely the best day to deploy that code you've been working on all week so that you can really enjoy the weekend, go into it with a fresh start, a clear mind. So just do it. Get commit, get push, especially if you are using a platform like Platform.sh, who sponsors this show to run your applications, and you have lots of confidence in your ability to deploy on Friday without ruining anybody's weekend. So we have a nice show today. The title is Sell It, Improve Business Execution by Refining Your Pitch. But the idea actually came from one of the guests, who is Jessica Orozco, who's senior vice president of global sales at Platform.sh, so one of our own. And I'll be introducing all our guests in a moment. And the idea is how to actually be more effective when you are promoting an idea that you might have had or expressing a need or a desire that you might have, such that people really see it from your point of view and get on board with your idea so you can build momentum and traction with your idea and actually execute on it. I'm going to let the guests introduce themselves in a moment, and Jessica will introduce that topic a little bit better, but I just wanted to say that I think this will be a really fun conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. So the other guests are John Stuckey from Segal Benz, that's right. He's Vice President of Creative and Technology and Innovation. Hi, John. Nice to have you here.
Hi, glad to be here.
And Doug Cisco, who's Managing Director of the Adapt Agency, which is an agency based all around the world, but he himself is in Portland, Maine, as we just discovered on the pre-show. Hi, Doug. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. Great to be here, guys. Super.
Yeah. So I think I'll do it just a slight bit differently this week. I'm going to have Jessica actually give a better presentation of the topic than I was able to give, since it was her idea. And then we'll go around the table and give a brief statement about who we are and what's our relationship to this topic, right? Like, why is it dear to us? Go ahead, Jessica.
Yeah, thanks, Robert, and thanks for having us on this week's show. So really, this idea kind of came from, being an executive for Platform.sh. I get asked for a lot of things all of the time from different people, different team members, different peers within the organization. And sometimes, I buy into that idea, and then sometimes I don't. And so what I was trying to think about is, why is that, right? And so that's kind of what I want to explore on this call. Is I know that there's people out there that are trying to negotiate for a promotion or a raise, or they're trying to get their manager to buy in on this new way of doing things, or spending money on a tool they need. And those things are critical to them. So how can we help those people ensure that they pitch it right? They're thinking about this the right way, so that way when they do go and pitch that to whoever that is, they can actually have some success.
So let me actually go into that a little bit for clarification as well, so that I really understand the topic myself. Very important as the host. So you framed it as, when they need something, but it doesn't also apply if you have an idea for the improvement of the company. Like, shouldn't we be doing this? Should we, open a that? Should we buy a that? Should we build a whatever? That's the same kind of situation, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it could definitely include innovative ideas, right? And how to kind of get buy-in for those ideas, especially if it's a little different than the plan that people had going into the year or the quarter or the whatever the idea was before, right? And how do you change is probably the hardest part of our jobs. And so how do you help kind of enable those thoughts and ideas to come forward, but how do you do it in an effective way?
Brilliant. Perfect. Thank you. All right. With that introduction to the introductions, let's do the introductions. John, I'm going to hand it over to you. Who are you? A little bit. Where are you? What do you do? And what's your inroad to the topic that Jess put forward?
Sure. So thanks. And first of all, just thank you for having me. It's great to be here. So yeah, my name is John Stuckey. I work for Sigal Benz. So Sigal Benz, for those of you who are not aware, we are a digital agency that focuses exclusively on HR and benefits communications. So we help our clients help communicate to their employees or their audiences, their members, about their benefits. So HR and benefits topics. So things like medical, dental, vision, 401k, life insurance, pension, all of those great topics. And basically what we've seen over the years, just a quick brief introduction on Segal Benz, is that employers are spending all kinds of money in the benefit space, and many of those benefits are going underutilized. So what we attempt to do is to really actively market those benefits so that we can increase engagement for our audiences. So that's kind of what our company does in a very brief nutshell. We do end-to-end strategy, as well as other print production, fulfillment, and all of the things in between, including digital production, including websites, emails, and so forth. I've been in this industry for about 25 years, and so like I am on the other side and close to the other Portland, outside of Portland, Oregon. So you have you covered coast to coast, coast to coast, from Portland to Portland, and yeah. So I've been in this industry for about 25 years. And I've been building HR technology solutions since 1996. So it's been a long ride, and my connection to this topic in particular, I'm very passionate about it because I'm a firm believer in really trying to be effective with your pitching whether you're pitching internally or whether you're pitching externally. And really, for me, it all boils down to really knowing your audience very well and adjusting and adapting your communication style to your audience. So we'll get more into that. That's a quick introduction about me. On a personal note, I'm married, got 2 kids and a dog, and a huge soccer fan.
Awesome. Thank you so much. How about you, Doug?
Everybody, good morning and good afternoon to the world. So my name is Doug Sisko. I am a managing director for Adapt Agency, and similar to John, we are a full digital agency, but we're focused really on creating human-centered experiences because our headquarters is in Copenhagen, Denmark, and we are kind of the center of design. There are a lot of great places for design, but we take a lot of pride in our heritage. And if you ever want to see a great collection of chairs, guys, go to the Danish Design Museum. It's wonderful. We've worked with the likes of Lego, IKEA. We work with like Workhuman in the United States, who are a Platform.sh partner. And we really try to create sustainable solutions for the world. We're talking about sustainability initiatives, and we try to use technology and create this empathetic place that we'll talk about later. But I have a real passion for creating inclusion, using communication to advocate for like a developer, a member of the team, really anybody at this point. I think the skills, the things we'll talk about today will really apply to not just your work lives, but really everything. So this is exciting, and thank you for having us and me.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Jess, let's start off with the first use case that you mentioned. Let's say you're a manager, as you are, and somebody comes to you and says they need something, a tool, an enablement of some sort that requires permission, some help, budget, who knows what, okay? How do you handle that situation, and how does that, what kind of mistakes do you see people make when they are themselves in that situation?
Yeah, thanks. So I think that the first thing is that the biggest mistake that they make is that they don't think about how it aligns to what the business initiatives are, right? So every company that wants to remain in business needs to figure out what their initiatives are for the year. You know, if they have a revenue goal to get to, they want to put out a new product or, you know, what have you. And so, you know, if this person came to me and said, hey, I need this tool, my first question would be, how does it align to our core initiatives, right? How does it align to the goals of this year for us? And if it's something that does align, then by all means, I will try to support that and figure out how we can get that done. But if they have a hard time articulating how that aligns, then that's when, you know, things could go awry. So for me, it's really about trying to understand the problem and how that aligns to exactly what it is that we're all trying to achieve together as a team.
Okay. Do you have any examples, like made up examples or real examples of how that went well or how it didn't go well?
Yeah, absolutely. So a while back, we had somebody on the team that said, "Hey, we're all remote. We can't be around each other. We can't hear what each other is saying on a call." And so I found this really amazing tool called Chorus AI that records all of your meetings online, and so that way we can all share in that learning. It was a pretty expensive tool, and it was not in my budget. But I could see how that could really align to making sure that we're all, saying the same things and learning from each other and on our sales calls and things like that. So that was an easy decision for me to make that, yep, this exactly aligns to what we're trying to achieve here together. So
I can confirm that the Chorus AI bot does join our calls and takes notes, and people actually use it. I was skeptical of that when I first saw it, but it's turned out to be very very especially good for like if somebody wasn't able to make a call and they don't want to like sit through in real time all 100 minutes of the call. But with the Chorus AI note taker, you can just look at a transcript, and even if it's not perfectly verbatim, you can really get the main points and figure out, if you do want to see some of the recording, where to go and all of that. So that person, had a very good suggestion, and good on you for recognizing that and bringing that into the company. Well, when did it go wrong?
when it went wrong is when there was a small issue, a small problem that was something that could be, we could utilize like an Excel spreadsheet to do. So, yeah, it's going to take you a few more steps, but it's just, automating things that really weren't that critical to the business. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to save an hour of your time. You're just going to have to do it manually until we get to a point where it really becomes too much of a pain where we can't manage it.
Okay, but that's a hard message to hear. If I just come in, if I come to you and say, I really hate entering Excel spreadsheets, which, for the record, true story, I hate that. And I say, Jess, I really need this tool. It's going to automate it for me, please. And you say no. I mean, it breaks my heart a little bit, doesn't it?
It does, definitely. I mean, sometimes it's tough love. But I think it's one of those things where as executives we have to balance the budget, right? And there's only so many dollars and so many hours in the day, right? So if you're going to be spending your effort and time doing something, it's got to be meaningful because we don't have time to waste.
How about you, Doug? What's your take on this particular need when somebody needs something as an enablement, or they think that the company should get something or do something precise, like add Chorus AI or get rid of Excel spreadsheets?
I love Jessica's point here. I love the tough love. So it's about value. I learned this. I used to work at the Harvard Business Review. As an executive, you need to determine value that's from a holistic perspective, and sometimes that's also revenue and how you spend your budget. And it's really enabling your teams to understand how to articulate that based upon the goals that you've talked about. So, for example, the spreadsheet, and using Chorus AI, potentially that's going to save you time and hours for your team. That could be a more compelling case, not just because this is annoying. I don't like this tool, like Excel. That's not going to really be making your case. And a lot of what we're talking about, I think, today is making your case in a way that's respecting the listener and being aware to executives that you can manage up, manage sideways, and managing down. And so you really need to understand value for the organization and the company, a nonprofit or corporation.
So Doug,
yes.
Let's say you report to Jessica and you want Chorus AI. What's a good way to ask for it?
That's a great question, Jessica. Let's see if you're gonna fire me. Jessica, we have a great tool we can use, outside the organization. We don't need to custom code this. And we're going to be able to get reporting, get metrics. We're going to be able to reduce hours so our sales team can focus on the value that we need to deliver. We got smart people here. Aren't we wasting, their time? Just, copy and pasting? Robert's so great on the team. He's a great BDR. Wouldn't it be great to kind of automate this process? There's a licensing cost. If you think about how much it's going to cost if Robert's always, wasting his time, and there's an opportunity cost there too. Jessica, what do you think?
I'm sold. Where do I sign?
Okay. Awesome. Okay, John, it's your turn. You get to pitch it to Jessica in a bad way.
In a bad way. Okay, cool. All right. So Jessica, there's this tool I found, and I think we should do it. Oh.
Wait a minute, I'm sold.
Yeah,
That wasn't bad
definitely.
enough.
That wasn't bad enough. Okay. Well, okay. All right, I'll try to make it even worse then. So Jessica, I don't know. There was this thing, and I read an article on it, and I think it might be interesting. What do you think?
What, I mean, can you tell me more?
Well, I read this article, yeah, and it was just this new technology called Chorus AI, and yeah, it sounds kind of cool.
Great. Well, John, thanks for bringing it to my attention. Why don't you go take a look at it and figure out exactly how it can maybe solve some of the problems that we've been talking about, and then let's have a conversation about it next week.
Yeah, but the article said we should just do it.
Yeah, I'm really having a hard time finding how exactly it's going to help us. So maybe you can help me with that.
So this is great because
Do you want to read the article?
This is great because what I didn't tell you both in this little role play is this is the all hands company meeting, and I'm the CEO, and I'm getting a little upset that this guy that I don't even know we hired, John, who are you, by the way? We're this huge company. Why are you taking up our time asking Jessica? Should be a private matter, and it doesn't sound that compelling anyway. And I'm like, Jess, who is this guy? And Jess is like, oh gosh. So Jess, you're now in this situation. You have to coach John on how to ask for things. What do you tell him?
Yeah, good question. So the way that I would coach John after that public statement is that I would say, hey, John, I think that your approach, maybe as I'm sure it's very well intended, could have been maybe more successful if you would have taken the time to read the article, figure out exactly how it aligns to the goals and the KPIs that we have for this quarter. And then you and I can work together on how to maybe figure out how to better state your needs so that it is clear to everybody that this is important and how exactly it's going to be able to help us achieve those goals.
Wow.
That's great.
I just want to bask in the glow of that amazing delivery, Jess. Thank you. So, John, you're a reformed person now, right? You've been given like this wisdom from none other than Jessica herself.
Mm-hmm.
What do you take away from that? I mean, and what now coming out of the role play? How do you? What would you add to that in terms of like either situations you've seen or anecdotes that you've seen where something similar or different happened, but also just like what's your overall view on how to be effective when trying to initiate change?
Yeah, and I hate giving this answer because I just do, but it really depends on the change that you're advocating for. So like the approach that you take, if you're asking to make a major investment in the company or whatever versus, hey, I need a new mouse, two very different requests, two very different needs. And two very different approaches. So I just want to state that, for the record, there's not a one size fits all approach. That said, I think what we're talking about here is more on the erring on the side of like more major investments and not talking about, hey, can I get a new mouse? That said, I think one of the biggest lessons is just really about being prepared for the conversation. That's why I was trying to illustrate in the bad example of like, do your homework. It really anticipate the questions that the person that you're selling it to is going to ask, and answer them before the person has a chance to ask the questions. So that is a surefire way for most people to really gain their respect and say, look, I know you have concerns about the budget. And I've looked into it, and this is how this will work into the budget, and this is how we can make it work. And so anticipating what those barriers are going to be, and getting ahead of those, and then also I think, and this could just be me and the way that my brain works and processes, but I'm very much like a pros and cons kind of person. Like I like to see pros, I like to see the cons, I like to weigh things, I like to balance things, and I like to make educated decisions. And so I think if you're able to go into those conversations and have like very fair conversations, and the pros should outweigh the cons. And if they don't, then that, maybe revisit or try something different. But those are some of the, I guess, my takeaways that I would say on this particular topic.
That's awesome, and I love pros and cons, and I often can be found making, columned lists of pros and cons for various things, all the way from what should I have for lunch today to, huge life decisions, that influence every fiber of my existence. So totally a fan of that approach. I think it speaks for itself. What I'm curious about in what you said is how you look into the other person's point of view and anticipate what they're going to ask. How do you do that?
So that's a great question. But I think fundamentally by really listening and observing. So a lot of this gets easier over time as you have more history working with the person. So it's hard to do if you're like a brand new employee and you're just working for a new manager for the first time and you really don't know them that well. But as you gain experience over time, pay attention to the little details, pay attention to what they react to, how they react. A good example of that would be, and many executives that I know, they want the bottom line on top, and then supporting details later. They don't have a lot of time or they don't want to get into a ton of the details, unless they have.
Cut to the chase, in other words, right?
Cut to the chase.
Don't bury the lead.
Don't bury the lead, but be prepared to have the backup to back up your position, right? And so I think that's a strategy that usually you can lead with. But really, like I said, it really kind of depends. You have to listen to your audience and observe and see what motivates them. How do they make decisions? And you can do that just in an observing kind of mode as you get to know them more.
Doug, I saw a lot of head bobbing.
That's great. I love it, John. I'm going to jump on board. No, it's wonderful. I mean, I think, John, to your point, I think I'm getting this right. In journalism, you have the lead. And when you talk to folks, you want to have like your punch statement. And to what Jessica is saying, think about the KPIs, think about what's motivating the organization, and then give your supporting points. For me personally, I like bullet points. And then if you want to give more detail, and then you can actually lay those out, but really make sure you make your point really at the top. A lot of people tend to write like they're writing a Stephen King book. I'm gonna give a little shout out to Domain. And I love Stephen King, but who's gonna read 1,000 pages sometimes, okay? That's a very specific situation. So definitely make your point. And one other thing I think, Jessica, I wanted to touch upon, always think about use cases too. A mistake that people make, they're, hey, Jessica, we need this tool because it'll make things easier. What's a specific thing that you're trying to deal with as an organization? You hear designers talk about use cases. You too, as a developer, engineer, marketer, what's a use case that's going to help drive that? I find most early professional people aren't specific enough, and it's hard for us as managers to enable them. I think as manager, it's us to give them an environment, but we still need specifics to make actionable decisions.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted just to add real quick is back to, again, knowing your audience. And I agree with everything you said there, Doug. To the extent that you can find out what motivates a person, and what triggers them. For example, like some people are really data people. Some people are really, really focused on ROI. Some people are really focused on business cases, and some people are really focused on press and attention. One of my mentors a long time ago told me, he's like, John, he's like, there's two types of people in this world. There are people who want to be famous, and there's people who don't want to be infamous. And you think about it, like, so some people really like to have the limelight and, be, out in the open, and other people, they just don't want to make a mistake, right? They just like, hey, status quo is fine. I like it quiet. I don't want any disruption, boom. And so knowing who your audience is there, and then also so I have another real quick story that I want to share because it's so telling, and it sticks with me after all these years. Some people are really more emotional decision makers as opposed to data driven. So really quick story. This is probably about 20 years ago. What was that, Robert?
I was just
emotional decision makers
to Jessica outing herself as an emotional decision maker.
Oh, okay, yeah. So this is about 15 or 20 years ago. Previous employer, and I had the reputation at the time of being like the web guy, right? And so I had this great idea. I was going up to my senior.
That's infamy, by the way.
Yeah. I was going up to my senior executive, and I had this great idea for this process improvement for our organization, like a better way of doing things. And so and I'm a kind of an analytical person, so my default was I went and I created this process flow chart, classic swim lanes and different roles and timing and all this stuff. And I was so proud of this thing, and I printed it out on legal paper. It was a big, and this is back in the days when we printed things, and back when we were in the office too. And I walked up to her and I said, "Okay, here's this great idea. This new process, we should be doing it." And she froze like a deer in headlights, and she looked at me, and you know what her reaction was? Her reaction was this. She said, "John, we're not building a website. We're not." And I'm like, I was floored. This has nothing to do with websites. This is a process map, right? So like my lesson there was, okay, John, you can't just articulate a convincing argument that you find yourself is convincing, because that process map was convincing to me because I'm a data and analytical mindset. Like I would have been so much better off going to her with an emotional story about telling about the problem and like how awful it was and how much better things could be, painting that vision, right? So that was my lesson learned about like, okay, just because it makes sense in your mind doesn't necessarily make it sense in your audience's mind. So anyway, just a quick story there. And I love using that example because it was really game-changing for me, and it was kind of an epiphany for me throughout the rest of my career.
I love that example, and I see that Jessica's got something to say. But before you do, Jessica, I just wanted to ask John, if you could do I at the age of 49, I spend a lot of time thinking, what would I do different if I went back to a certain moment? And like, I spent an embarrassing amount of time thinking that. What would you do different if you could go back to that moment? Can you like give us a taste of what it would come off as? Like it wouldn't be a stack of legal diagrams.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would go back to that. I would go back to that moment in time, and I would really, I would really focus on storytelling, and really play at the emotions and really take that angle. So I wouldn't use data. I wouldn't use. I probably wouldn't have I wouldn't have presented a PowerPoint deck or anything. I would have a conversation with that person. And I would have pulled her aside. We would have grabbed coffee. We would have maybe even been outside the office, and really have a heart-to-heart with that person, and really explain with my passion around why I was so passionate about my idea and how it would make things better. And I think I would have had a better outcome, because again, as soon as I showed her anything, that remote, and that's not even technical, right? A flow chart, a process flow chart, it's not even a technical, but she just froze, and like, that's website stuff. And I don't do website stuff, so that was her mindset. So that's what I would do differently.
Jess?
Yeah, it just reminds me of a training that we did, a personality training called DISC, DISC. And it's so true, right? Everybody kind of defaults to their different quadrants of what their kind of primary way of thinking is. And mine is I. So I am emotional in that way, that I think about everybody. So I want kind of like to put that into perspective too, is the people and how this decision is going to impact the people. Because I'm really big up on culture and team, and so I always want to take them into account. So if somebody were to approach me with the same kind of information, yes, I would love the story, but I would also love the story because then it would give me a better understanding of how it impacts the people.
one other real quick thing to add would just to talk about like format of your presentation. Like some people really love Excel, some people really love PowerPoint, some people really love Word, some people really love PDFs. Like even little trivial things like that. Like think of who your audience is, and that's important, right? Just taking the extra time to like really try to, you can do your pitch in any format, but think about what your audience is what's gonna be best received.
I think you guys are spot on. I think the word framing, I'm not sure if we said this yet, but framing is super critical, and people absorb information in different ways. I can't think about the modalities of information. I love your example, John, of taking a walk. I knew somebody, they were a leader of a publishing company. They love taking walks, okay? And that was their time to make decisions. Some people do like spreadsheets. This is true. I tell my team, you know, I love my team. So I'm so proud of them. But, you know, look at Slack, use email. Some people are verbal. So to really engage them, it's gonna be verbal. I think you guys were kind of alluding also to something about like this decisions and like presenting things. There's this concept, a book called Thinking Fast and Slow, and System 1 and System 2 Thinking by Daniel Kahneman. He talks about how we make decisions. And oftentimes we do make emotional decisions. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. So if you guys do want to read this book, I do recommend it. But sometimes lean into that, okay? Take a walk with that executive. Present the storytelling. And many of us do like storytelling. I'm a musician, and I love a great song. Sing your song to the executive. And sometimes, as much as you want to give all that data in the spreadsheet, if you sing your song at that moment, you actually may get that project greenlit. So a few tidbits there. So I love this. This is great.
Yeah, and one thing I would add to that is, you know, I think it's also, it's not just you, right? Find other people, like John said, observe who those people that you're trying to convince take information from, and who they actually ask questions to in a meeting and things like that, because that'll show you that they really value their opinion. And so go to those people and say, hey, you seem to have a great relationship with Jessica. What advice could you give me on this thing that I'm trying to pitch to her? How could she be, you know, more willing to buy in on this? Because it seems like you've been able to do that with her. And then also ask them, like, what risks do I have going in? Like, what should I consider, kind of to John's point about the pros and cons, you know, because you always have to think about it as what's in it for them, right? Not only what's in it for me, but what's in it for them, so that you can really sell them on it.
So we have a question from the audience as well. Jess, maybe you want to address that. Can enthusiasm help to persuade?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to give the same answer to that John did. It depends, right? It depends on your audience. Some people are very much persuaded by enthusiasm and energy, and then others think it's just fluff, right? So I think it just really depends on who you're trying to influence.
I have a personal anecdote around enthusiasm, and why I'm a little suspicious of it at times, and it's because I'm a very enthusiastic person, and often present, you know, a lot of enthusiasm with whatever idea that I put forth. And I learned this when I was a teenager, and I went on vacation with my girlfriend at the time and one of my best friends and his girlfriend at the time. So the four of us were all camping up in some crazy part of Michigan. And on like the fifth day or said something, they told me, Rob, we're not doing what you want to do today. I was like, wow. Why not? It's like, that's a weird thing to state at the beginning of the day. We're not doing what you want to do today. Yeah, Rob, it's because every day we've been here, you've said, why don't we do this? And you sell us on it, and you make it sound like it's going to be so much fun, but actually, we haven't had any fun at all doing any of those things. And I had to learn the hard way that I had to really think about the other people, just like you've been saying, before I propose that we do something. Like, what's in it for them, right? I had a great time hiking through the dunes and the woods and eating berries and climbing trees, but maybe they didn't want to do those things, right? we actually have another guest who is about to join. It was a bit of a surprise to me, but I would like to welcome Rudy Dodier to the show. Rudy is also from Platform.sh, works closely with Jess, and I work with Rudy as well. Hey, Rudy, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to be here. Nice to meet everyone.
Are you the person that asked for Jess for something and she had to say no?
That is on a weekly basis.
So you've been following along with the conversation, I assume, about how to pitch what you need or what your idea is, and how to like really get buy-in for your ideas so that you can have an effect, affect a change. What's your take on that topic, and what's your sage advice?
So everybody has had really good advice and standpoints. I think one of the big things I learned in my old career, which was with a large retailer, Abercrombie and Fitch. I was required to go recruiting. I lived in Germany and in London, and in Germany I had to recruit in my German. Wasn't very good German, but part of engaging somebody just off walking down the street was finding that common ground. So, introducing yourself, stating your purpose, but finding that common ground so that you can tailor what's in it for them. A lot of when we talk to, executives and really anyone for that matter, you have to meet them where they're at and identify the type of personality. And so I think that is a really key piece. Something that I think is important is, a lot of people think of the golden rule, treat others as you'd want to be treated. But I find that the platinum rule is a lot more applicable, and that is treat others as they want to be treated. And so I find that to be really helpful.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I wanted to turn the conversation in a bit of a different direction at this point, because we've talked, we came at the topic from the point of overcoming a need, but I'm really curious about how then these ideas apply to simply strategic decision making in general. So in some of the earlier conversation, there was a kind of a hierarchy implied, like somebody comes to you as a manager and you've got to say yes or no, or you're going to your manager and you've got to get them to say yes or no. Let's just say we're like doing a company together, the five of us here on the phone, and we've each come up with a great idea and we each have to present it. Okay. How do you do it in a situation like that, where it's not just about getting other people to get your mind share and like see your vision, but it's also about collectively coming up with a way forward that actually prioritizes the best idea for the group, even if it means letting go of your idea in the end? How do you do that, and who wants to take that? I'm just going to throw it out there.
Jessica, I see you. Do you want to jump in?
I mean, I can, but if you're willing to, I'd give you the baton.
I'll start it off here. Well, Robert, we're a pretty flat organization at Adapt, and so I'm actually going to go into this I want to get this done with you guys and do the preparation. I'm going to talk to John. I'll talk to you, Jessica. I'm going to talk to you, Rudy. I'm going to talk to you, Robert. I'm actually going to also see what you guys want out of this initiative. So I'm here to be a steward, but ultimately, I want to see what you guys need, because I need all of you guys together. Okay. So we don't really try to think of zero-sum games for our organization and with our clients in the sales situation. We're not going to win. There's enough for all of us here. So I'm going to definitely talk to all you guys up front. And so we actually have a cohesive plan. And we kind of talked about this earlier, so I'm kind of bringing us back. But if John's more visual, I'll get more visual. And then we'll probably have a deck. I would actually say to anybody, always document things in some kind of form. Especially if you're going to have to give a presentation, as much as you may not want to, and some people do. You're going to need to succinctly articulate your ideas. But that preparation stage is so critical for us at Adapt, so we know what we're trying to figure out. Because some people don't know, or you need to give them time to be deliberate to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I kind of was going to say the same. One thing that I would add, though, is that we have to orient ourselves around a common goal. And as a company, what we're trying to achieve is to please our customers and to make them successful. So which of our ideas is going to get to that better? quicker, faster. And then I think that's the idea that we ultimately end up going with.
But that ties directly into your advice from the beginning, Jess, that you should always, base what you're proposing in terms of KPIs or how it furthers along the overall mission. So your big advice here is to always keep that mission in sight. Like, don't lose sight of the main mission.
Absolutely. I mean, that is every decision making. And one thing I wanted to touch back on that Doug said about how, some people are emotional decision makers. I would argue that every human being is an emotional decision maker, right? We decide with emotion and we try to justify it with rational thought.
Guys, jump in really quickly. I love that, Jessica. So I learned a lot by not assuming people are always rational all the time, and sometimes they had a bad day. I was talking to you guys before we started. There's this thing called the fundamental attribution error. Basically says we discount the situation. If you try to give your pitch, maybe that person was having a bad day. It had nothing to do with you. So there is a lot of value as a leader, as a person who wants to mentor folks. I encourage you to keep doing it. And so I could have had a bad day. My cat could have, destroyed the couch. And this is true. We're not computers. As much as we deliver awesome services, Jessica, spot on. We're always emotional, and we're humans.
What is the fundamental attribution error? So I don't have to go read that Wikipedia article.
Yeah,
myself.
the long story short, Robert, is basically is oftentimes, we assume, it might be the person and their traits that sort of like affected the situation. Okay, so if I came to you, Robert, with this proposal, Robert doesn't get my vision. Robert is only concerned about his own good. But you had a bad day. Things weren't going right. You had a bad breakfast, and we typically, underestimate the impact of the situational factors, and people tend to mistake that quite a bit. So just again, it wasn't you; it was the situation.
That's like if we go out to eat and you pick Japanese and I don't like it because maybe I've got an upset stomach that day and it has nothing to do with Japanese. And you later go and say, hey, Robert doesn't like Japanese food. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about?
Exactly. I feel bad. You feel bad. It's just awkward. And we don't see each other again. Okay. But you just had a bad tummy that day, basically.
Yeah. It was, yeah. Or I drank too much, but who knows?
There you go. Yeah.
We lost Jess. Oh my gosh. How about you, Rudy? When you're trying to propose something or listening to a proposal that it has like business impact, and you're trying to, and the way I'm curious about this is not just like yes or no, because like usually people have lots of good ideas, and it's there's usually never a paucity of good ideas, and the people I work with at Platform.sh have amazing ideas all the time. It's not good ideas are scarce. It's like, which one do we do first? Because all the other ones have to wait in line. How do you go about that situation?
I think it's kind of in line with what has already been said, and it's so the term that what I like to do, it's a term called blank slating, and what it really is it's exactly how it sounds. It's kind of taking a moment to clear your mind and refocusing the conversation back on like the mission and the purpose of what is driving the meeting, the business outcomes, because a lot of times, like you said, there are a lot of great ideas, or like in a given conversation, a lot of different avenues we start going down and topics, and before you know it, you have this spider web of conversations, and you almost forget what the main goal is. And so I think a lot of times it's about refocusing what the conversation is supposed to be on, and allowing everyone to remember, why they came to the conversation in the first place.
Yeah. So no wonder you and Jess work so well together. You're like clones. You say the same things. Focus on the goal. It's the right answer though, so it's good. John,
Robert, go
curious. Ahead. Do jump in, say whatever you were about to say, but also, if you can, bring us further in your personal history from the example of the failed proposal, and recall a time when you actually succeeded in shaping a big business decision or something, and how did it work? So go ahead. What were you going to say?
Yeah. Yeah, what I was going to say was, back on the previous topic we were just talking about. I think one thing I just want to say real quickly on the kind of, we're talking about brainstorming, if you will. Like if we all have 5 of us have different ideas or whatever, we come together collectively. Like we do brainstorming all the time at our organization, and it is so powerful and it's so helpful. I think one of the most important things to do is just like to drop all egos at the door and say, and really get that diverse perspective. We bring in designers, we bring in technologists, we bring in project managers, we bring in proofreaders, we bring in everybody. But back to Rudy's point and Jessica's point earlier too, it all has to be centered back on the goal. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And so whether that's key business objectives or whatever, or if it's a different thing, if you're doing a specific project or whatever, it's got to be focused on the goal. And then get all those ideas out there and see where they lead, and have an open mind. So I just wanted to chime in on that. The other thing I wanted to throw in real quickly, and I'll get back to your other question in just a second, is a lot of it also comes back to kind of marketing 101. We were all taught in school features, advantages, and benefits, right? The FAB, really focusing on the benefit. Really, it's very, very easy to get distracted with shiny things like, hey, this is really cool. It's a cool feature. Ours goes to 11 or whatever. Like, okay, well, it goes to 11. Like, so what's the benefit of that? Like, how does that benefit? So really, when you're able to focus on the benefits of whatever you're trying to pitch, usually you're more successful. So an example where I was successful in advocating for change was actually, this is not planned, or we didn't talk about this in advance, but we recently made a decision to come to Platform.sh for a lot of our hosting, and so that was a big change for us as an organization, and something that I had to get leadership, executive buy-in, my boss's boss, to do. And so I did my homework, did thorough evaluation of the situation, did my pros and cons, all of that stuff, gathered all my data, and then I made my pitch, my case. And the way that I did that was I adjusted my style to my audience, but was fully prepared with all of the detail. I think the other thing that I will throw in there is that I also I gathered a lot of additional support. It was not a decision that was made in a vacuum. So it is, that is so important to make sure like your team is fully on board, etc. None of the stuff none of us operate in a vacuum. And so really making sure that you have buy-in and people are all in and invested. So that's one example. I could give others, but I know we're short on time.
We're not short on time. We've got plenty of time to say the important things. It's just deciding what the important things are, right?
Well, that's right. It's about prioritization. That, like, again, like the example, like all 5 of us have really great ideas, but which do we do first? Which do we second? And time is one of the ultimate currencies.
So let me ask you this, and I'll keep it with you, John, to answer first, but others can join after that. What you're describing sounds like politics. Like you're actually, drawing the house down the aisle and seeing who's going to be in favor of and who's going to be against, and what's their motivation and what's going to move them to this side or that side. What's the difference between like sketching out your plan for a successful pitch and actual politics?
That's a great question. That also really depends on the organization. So at at a former employer, things were a lot more political internally than what they are at Segal Benz. And so that's something that you have to be aware of. And that's just, I think there are politics in every organization. I'm sure there's politics at Platform.sh, and Doug, I'm sure you've got politics. I mean, in some shape or fashion. But ultimately, I would sub the term politics for relationships. And so to me, it's about relationships, and and the same thing goes with like when we're consulting with our clients too. There are different dynamics. There's customer and vendor kind of relationships, and there are peer relationships, and there's competitor relationships, and there's all of this dynamic environment. So I don't know if I'm really answering your question.
I couldn't agree with you more, John. I mean, it is about, because again, we're human beings, right? And human beings need to be connected. They need to be heard. And it is so much about not only getting the buy-in on your idea, but getting people to buy in on you, right? So it's about doing the work, getting to know people, building those relationships internally. So when you do have that great idea that you want to, launch and you want to get buy-in on, you don't have to go and start from ground zero, right? You can start from, hey, I like John. I like what John has to say. He brings a lot of value to this organization, and I'm going to see how I can help him, right?
Yeah. We had a old colleague. We talk about the cup of trust. It slowly fills up, and you need to build the relationships. Another metaphor is planting seeds. We're gardening too. For folks, early career, mid-career, late career, you are going to probably meet that person again at some point. And you get credibility, you build trust. This helps you become a great performer at your current company and also beyond, because it's been a crazy marketplace now for labor and for people too. So it's really good to kind of plant those seeds, and you'll be really surprised, but also be patient too. I was guilty of that early career, expecting immediate things to happen, but the larger the organization, politics and relationships were people. They're there, and it takes time. But I think people would be surprised if you come with good intent. I like the, did you say blank slate, Rudy? What was the concept you guys use?
Blank slate, yeah.
Blank slate and good intentions, and that cup of trust, you will see benefits. You will see results. But again, you got to be patient. I love that. I love that. I love that. I just read someone's mind.
You might be responding to the private chat. So somebody had brought up we have these like show notes for the preparation, and in the preparation notes, and I can't even see right now whom to attribute it to. I think Doug, you're raising your hand.
Yeah.
Somebody has written monolithic versus smaller decisions. I'm like, that looks interesting. What do they mean? So Doug, what do you mean?
So I'm like, that's a great thing, Robert. We're like connected here. We are.
We are. I'm reading your writing.
One thing that I've kind of toyed with is, and this actually speaks to platforms too in web development, but really making decisions. Do we try to have one huge monolithic decision, and this can be a decision to move to an ERP platform, or can we split the decisions into smaller chunks? I would advise anybody, break up your decisions into smaller chunks so they're doable. This is the whole point of the agile methodology. We're making smaller bets over time. And so for folks looking to get buy-in and help sell their ideas, bring in the big A, bring in agile. So you don't need to make a big monolithic decision, because what happens, politics, okay?
So let's work on that. Let's come back to the Chorus AI decision, okay? Let's say that was going to be a hard sell. Now, let's say I'm asking for it this time, Jess, okay? So, Jessica, I've noticed on meetings that, first of all, we're having a hard time scheduling meetings so that everybody who needs to be on a meeting can be there. Sometimes, we're having to record the meeting and people are watching it. Do you think that's a problem?
Yeah, it is a problem. I hate when people get on a call especially with the customer, and they have nothing to say and they just kind of sit there, right?
Because they don't know the background, right? Exactly.
Absolutely. But Robert, honestly, we're just way over budget this year. We're not going to be able to fit it into this year. But I
haven't asked for anything yet.
Right. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I thought you had already pitched.
I was going to build it up, man. I had a build up all planned.
Ahead.
My build up was like, do you think we should eventually, maybe in one of the upcoming budgetary cycles, solve this problem?
Of course. Yeah.
Of course. Do you think we should set, maybe there's a technological solution to that we should look for? When I'm likening this in my mind is like the sushi. Like, should we go eat sushi or not? Okay, maybe I want to eat sushi. So, hey, let's turn right here, right? Like that's a small decision along the way to eating sushi.
I would coach you to maybe change it for me. Again, know your audience. It's, hey, Jessica, so I've been observing and I've realized that here's the problem. And then I tried to go look for a solution, and here are some of the options that I came across. Here's kind of what my recommendation would be to fix this problem. This is what the ultimate outcome will be. People will be saving time. They won't have to be on calls that they don't need to be on and things like that. And then ultimately, like, here's what it's going to take to get there. And maybe, yeah, some pros and cons, like if we don't do it and if we do it.
So you know what my mistake was? I didn't follow the other advice, which was to give you the headline first. I was kind of leading you along, and you knew that. You could sense that, and you didn't like it. So you would want the headline first and all of the top-level information, and then decide at a later point, maybe when we have the money, to go into the detail for it. Got it.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Okay. See, I'm learning stuff on this call.
Good.
All right, guys, we have 5 minutes left for the show. What have we missed? I mean, we've covered a lot about like asking your superior or listening to the people who are asking you things and coaching them. We've talked a little bit about making decisions in an organization. How do you? What else should people be thinking about when they want their voice to be heard and their ideas to be taken seriously?
Can I ask a question on that? How do you guys manage up?
What do you mean by manage up, first of all?
So, like, how do you manage your manager, right? How do you get them to see things in a way that they may not be aware of today, right?
I think you send them Christmas presents and crates of wine, right?
If it were that easy, everybody would get presents for that. No, but what kind of some best practices to kind of manage up to your manager?
John, do you want to go? I feel like
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I can go. So yeah, I mean, there's a number of different things. I think one is, so it's about relationships. And so, really investing in and building those relationships over time so that you build up that trust is so important. My grandfather had a saying. It's always stuck with me, but I use it all the time. It takes a long time to build a reputation and a short time to ruin it. So truer words could not be spoken. And so really investing in that relationship, and then on the practical side, also, and the tactical side, paying attention to what their interests are, where their passions lie, and what is important to them. And so whenever if you're wanting to advocate for something, the more you're able to tie back into that, the better, because that creates kind of alignment. But it also helps just having really great managers too. So I'm very fortunate that I've got managers who trust me, and they support me and all that stuff. So I don't have tough sledding when it comes to that, unlike a lot of people do. So I count myself very fortunate. But I think aligning. I think sometimes and this is more just selling in general, not necessarily. It could be selling up, but it could be selling to anybody. Sometimes it's helpful, depending on the personalities, to plant those seeds like Doug was talking about, and trying to, and we do this in consulting sometimes when we're consulting with clients. It's always you're going to be more effective if the client thinks it's their idea as opposed to your idea. So if you're able to, again, I don't have pride of ownership. I just care about the end result or outcome. If you want to think it's your idea and we do it, great. Fine, I'm happy to do that. So, and sometimes, especially when we're consulting with clients, our clients want to have their thumbprint or their imprint, or, they want to be famous, or, whatever it is. Oh, that's fine. We're here to support you. I just care about the objective, which is doing X, Y, Z. So I don't really care about how we get there. I do care. I do care, but
That was just an amazing conclusion to the conversation in my mind. Personally, I've had to learn through hard knocks over my career that my manager always has a list of maybe 3 things that they're expecting from me at any given moment, and that's basically all they can keep in their head about me. and I'm not important enough for like a bullet list of 20 points, but the 3 things that they're looking for, and I need to show them that I know what those are, that I'm making progress on them, that I'm really taking care of those 3 things so that they can free up enough brain space in the conversation and set it aside so that I can introduce the 4th item, which is my agenda. Right. So like if you lead with, somebody who's interested in 1, 2, 3, if you lead with 4 and they've never even heard of it, they're going to be like, wait a minute, what are you focusing on? I'm a little bit worried about you now, Robert. Like, let me look at your calendar, your email history. What have you been doing the whole time, Robert?
It's so true. I mean, so true. Exactly.
Great. Doug, I saw that you did want to jump in there. You had one last thing to add?
I just love what you're saying. You have to kind of salt the oats, John. I feel like that's a Maine or Michigan thing. Salt the oats. And also people want to feel like that agency. I think you were kind of making that point as well. They want their stamp on it. Again, you're respecting them in the process. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for this really lively, very fun, and informative learning experience that I had. Thank you, Jess. I'll be signing up for your coaching courses on an ongoing basis because you're a fabulous coach. Thank you, Rudy, for your surprise appearance. I didn't know you were coming. I'm so glad you did. And thank you, Doug and John, for being our guests today. And thank you all for watching Deploy Friday. Come back next week for another great episode. I think we're going to talk about the interplanetary file system, which is amazing, and you won't want to miss that. All right. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Robert.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.